Welcome back, SoulNet. Today we're talking about just the load of responsibility that we have on our plate, what we're carrying, whether it's the stress management of family systems, social systems, or even our own internal systems. Islena is talking with us today about feeling the intense pressure of meeting responsibilities during her recent bout with COVID. We come together to hold space for her and to chat about what it means to unpack some of those responsibilities. Also, to find faith in the universe having our back. We're so happy you're with us today. Let's jump in. I just want to say it's such a gift for me to see you and to be with you because I feel like sometimes we're living in different parts, even though we're not. We're living in
Yeah.
the same
Mhm.
city,
Yeah.
but we're pulled in so many directions. It's almost like we're out of town.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we get this like time to have a coffee together, and it's just really a gift.
Mhm. Lovely, Meg.
I just want to say thank you for that because I know it's sacred time.
Yeah. Midlife is such a time of transition, of coming face to face with the burdens that we have created and the lack that we're experiencing because of the burdens that we've created and the responsibilities that we have. And we're confronted with this, like, what I would call in my own life, this train that keeps barreling forward. I can describe it as a train of, responsibilities, a train of pressure.
Mhm.
Like, I have to keep maintaining to maintain my structure that supports my family.
Mhm.
So when things happen, like I get sick, I get COVID, that train is it needs to keep going forward to keep providing the structure. If it doesn't and it derails, shit falls apart real fast. And
Mhm.
I really experienced that in the last couple of weeks of COVID. Like, my pressures were still there. They don't care that I'm sick.
Mhm.
And
No.
the needs to produce are still there. And I'm not, like, saying it out of victimhood. It's just it's the train I've created. It's the family I've raised. It's the children I have. It's the mother that requires my care. It's like, I could walk away from it all, or I could stay. Like, that's always a choice.
Yeah.
But, you know, the choice I make as for now is to stay with it all. And so, these kinds of pressures, I think it's so palpable to so many of us in midlife. We've spent decades creating our identity, and now we're, like, fulfilling the responsibilities of that identity. And it's not a criticism, it's just the price tag of that.
Mhm.
There's a huge price tag for it.
Mhm.
I've really felt it in the last few weeks of, well, 2 weeks of COVID. I'm
Yeah.
like, "Wow, this price tag energetically is huge," and it has had me reexamine things. You know, it reminds me that we are these spiritual, energetic beings having a human experience, and then when it's finished, I don't have the answer for where I go to. I'm not quite sure, but I have this kinda it feels like I'm plugged into collective consciousness where
Mhm.
I have some faith that the energy goes back to the big
Yeah. To the oneness that we are. Yeah.
and I'll be like, "Ah."
Mhm.
Like, "Ah,
Yes.
connection again." And then we have these, like, little blips of those connections in, like, day-to-day life here in this physical plane that has an incredible amount of suffering. But then we have these moments, like right now, where we're together sharing a coffee.
Mhm.
To me, it's like that time after school where we're like, "Hey, what a funny world we're in. How you doing?"
Yeah.
It reminds me too, like when we're younger and, I have teens, they're just in the moment. They're just present. I was really like just kind of feeling into this practice of presence. As a busy adult, we stray from because we have to be thinking about tomorrow and what that's going to happen next week. And I got to have the bills paid for next month. And I got to, like, so we're always kind of like jumping ahead in our minds. It just reminded me of that presence because kids are just in the moment. Like, I think sometimes we just have to be so consciously aware of when we're not present. In my mind, I was visualizing your train, and like we all have our train, right? But sometimes when we're brought to a halt, whether it's a sickness or a trauma or something is going on in your life and your train just stops,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just we have to find ways to unpack some of the train,
Yes.
like lighten the load,
Yeah.
right? And I so appreciate what part of the train can you lighten?
Yeah.
What part of the load can you release?
Yeah.
And I think in many times it feels like I can't let go of any of it. Like I'm responsible for all of this stuff.
Mhm.
But I do think it's such a great exercise for people to really kind of look into that really deeply
Yeah.
and think, okay, so if I were to unload something, what would it be?
Yeah.
Well, and I like to relate that to illness, to things like car accidents, a lot of things that we chalk up to these random events, but they really, when we take the time to evaluate what's going on in our life. These are actually invitations for us to slow down. They're warning signs. In my health journey, that was absolutely something that I did. I know my stylist pointed out a small patch on the back of my head months before it actually started to shed in like handfuls. And I was so in the rat race of single parenthood, business, trying to survive that I ignored that for longer than I had to. And it would come up in many experiences in my life where something not great would happen. And it was because I was not in alignment with what I was supposed to be doing. I was pushing, I was forcing, I was trying to make things happen. And the cost for me was my health. And that's a really common thing for a lot of us. But we often chalk up a lot of these experiences that we have in the world as it was just an accident. Well, was it? Like, where were you when that happened? And injuries in sports are a really great example of this.
Mhm.
And I coach a lot with clients around, I've done a lot of rehabilitation with clients over the years and some very kind of extreme type injuries. And whenever we're working on return to play or return to sport, the conversations really turn to the mental side of things and having them be so present in the moment of the sport. Because when we have an injury or trauma and we revisit the site of injury, often we're back in the injuries
Mm.
using these things as invitations to go deeper and heal some of those moments, right?
Yep.
What are the underlying messages? So, yes, it's a fender bender. Yes, it's COVID or it's a sinus infection or, whatever else it is. What's underneath that? And in my experience, these get worse and worse. If you continue to ignore the messages of the soul that are speaking through you through these environmental things, those messages get harder and harder and more impactful.
Totally. Yeah, in my coaching, we have a tool that I use, that's called the 4 feedback, and it speaks to exactly what you're saying about, like, it can get bigger and bigger each time. We're energetic beings in relationship with other energetic beings,
Yeah,
these little orbs, we're all in relationship with each other. And in that relational quality, we're sensing organisms. Our nervous system is set up to sense the environment around us and perceive threat, perceive danger, and perceive safety. Lean in where it's safe, lean out where there's potential threat. And in that sensing, the first feedback that we get is our own intuition, like parts within our own psyche saying, something's a little askew here, something is off balance here.
it's the spidey senses.
Yeah, spidey senses.
Yeah,
That's our first level, and if we ignore that, then it'll go to the next layer, which is, like,
yeah,
friends and family, that immediate sphere of influence. They'll give us some kind of feedback. It's not always accurate because they have their own traumas, they have their own perceptions. Each of us sensing organisms have our own perceptions, but they'll give some kind of feedback like, that doesn't feel," something feels off there. We may
yeah,
get defensive, we have our own reactions to it, but that's the second layer. If we ignore that, then it gets to the bigger community, society level of like, that's where we could get in trouble with the law or
yeah,
like, the bigger authority figure, like
Mhm.
DUIs or like things like this or whatever it is.
Or it can start impacting your work relationships
Your
or
work
right?
relationships, just that kind of bigger level. And then to speak to Dana's point, if we ignore that one, then it gets to that like Murphy's Law kind of the things that could go wrong will go wrong, the accidents or the big
Mm.
upsets, the financial bankruptcy or disillusion, like divorce, death, accidents, like the really big feedback. So, as sensing organisms, we have the capacity to engage with each level, but when we ignore, because we're in relationship with the universe, it'll keep giving us.
Yeah.
And I really noticed with being sick with COVID, like my conditioning from childhood to serve and fawn and sacrifice my own needs to keep the structure, going, so to speak.
Mhm.
That's what has brought me to my knees in midlife.
Yeah.
It's the old, data in my, ancestral programming that is, like, being challenged by the other aspects of me that have evolved and said, "Well, we don't subscribe to that anymore." And so there's this internal conflict in me going, "Well, but this is our programming, this is our conditioning. You're sup what the fuck?"
Yeah.
And then there's the new cycle breaker who's like,
Yeah.
"Hang on, I'm
Yeah.
gonna, like, deconstruct that."
And that speaks to the train, unpacking the train. We said earlier that these are the things that bring us to our knees. Unpacking the train is so huge. Like, I realized in my unpacking of the train that I won't leave my mom because I caregive for my elderly mom, right? What I did unpack from my train was my programmed tendency to take responsibility for her emotions or her condition or her, like, even aliveness. Like, I
Mm.
realized, wow, I had been programmed to take that on like a, what's that? Handmaid tale, like a handmaid,
Mm.
like a energetic handmaid.
Ah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I can unpack from the train.
That's a really big
Yeah.
load on the
Yeah,
train,
totally.
Islena, and I just wanna say, we are with you on this ride. We will help you unpack that shit because I've been there too, girl, and
Yes, you have. 100%.
I'm reminded, remember we had that conversation about the river?
Yeah.
And we feel sometimes we're in these places, like, when we're caregiving and we're mothering and we're all the things, and we get into crisis mode, and we need to get everybody to safety, to shore.
Yeah.
Remember that beautiful metaphor that I think it was you, Islena, that was talking about that, and I literally think about that often.
Wow.
That visual really resonated with me, and especially with our moms. You offered it to me, and I'm gonna offer it back. What I took from that conversation and what I've applied in my life is the idea that when we're in the river, we are flowing, right? We are moving around and over, and we're working with the river. We're in flow, which I know you know so well. And then sometimes we're, helping other people off to safety, right? But what we can do when we help our mothers who have narcissistic supply disorder, I just made up my own disorder, but whatever that
That's
is,
amazing.
it just felt into that. When you have a parent or a friend or a partner that is just literally like abusing their relationship with you and sucking your energy, but at the same time you have to caregive for them. So you've got this like really bizarre situation. So you get them to safety, which you've
Mm,
done for your mom. But what I would offer you is not to stay clinging to the riverbank.
mm,
And I mean that in a few different ways. Like, let go of that feeling of needing. There's a never ending need of supply for
yeah,
them, and they will never stop needing from you.
yeah,
When you know that they're safe in their wherever they are, whether they're in long-term care or assisted living, or setting them up for safety,
mhm,
and then letting go and going back into that free flowing river.
mm,
Because sometimes when we cling to something,
mhm,
we cling to, like, I clung to the idea for many years that my mom and, that I had a family unit
mhm,
because
mhm.
she's my mom.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So I clung to the idea that my dad had gone, he's passed, and I had only one parent. So I was just clinging to the riverbank of like family unit
familiarity.
familiarity.
Yeah,
If I let go of that idea, then that may mean that I have no one,
Yeah.
that I'm orphaned, right? Like
That's
that I
right.
feel so alone, that I don't have a parent. The
Yeah.
truth is, I don't have a parent. So when I let go of that load on my train, when I let go of that part of the riverbank, I was able to get back into the river with the flow of life
Yeah.
Yeah.
and receive the energy of others, receive,
Mm.
right? So that letting go is a little bit of like opening up to the flow, to receiving the energy of others. Because when we clinging,
Yeah.
we're not there. We're not there. We're clinging to,
The past usually.
yeah, we're clinging to something that actually likely might not be good for us, that isn't even real anymore.
Yeah.
We're clinging to ideas and ideals. And when we do that, we are not in the flow of that beautiful river, and we're not receiving the energy
Yeah.
from that river, from the people that are around us in the river. So I just offer you that river metaphor because it really
Yeah.
worked for me. And I think about it often when I feel like I'm clinging to something. I ask myself, what am I?
Yeah.
What am I clinging to on the side of the river right now? Because I am not free flowing.
Mm.
And gentle reminders for our guests too. This is all about the full moon energy. Let it go. The opportunity to reflect with the moon cycles of the moon every month, whatever it is. Let it go and let it flow.
Yes. It's really hard to do when you're clinging or when you're in that kind of crisis mode.
Yeah.
We get stuck there, right? We get stuck and our mind tells us, "I'm good.
Yeah.
I've got this.
Mhm.
I'm okay." And our body says, "You are not okay. This train is gonna crash. We're headed for disaster." The body keeps score of all this stuff, right? And so to Dana's point about the messages,
Mhm.
if we're not paying attention to the messages and we're not actively unpacking and unloading and letting go of the riverbank a little bit.
Yeah.
We always get pulled back in,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
it's that ebb and flow.
Yeah. I noticed for myself, for my system, this is why I'm so passionate about working with people who've experienced developmental trauma growing up and attachment trauma, like the inability to attach securely to some relative degree to a caregiver. There is no data in those people's nervous systems about faith
Mhm.
to letting go. And so going back to the point of the river is those with a significant degree of attachment trauma don't trust the river. And so that
Mm.
has to be rebuilt through
Yeah.
relational repair through other humans. Like, this is how we heal in community. This is why having a relationship with a therapist or a group that focuses on repair of your attachment wounds is, like, pretty much the only way to heal. We can heal in isolation, but we do it better in relation with others. Taking responsibility, of course, for what's inside of our own container,
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I have these thoughts because of my conditioning. Ah, no wonder I have these limiting beliefs. It's not because I'm bad or wrong, it's because of my training, it's because of my environment, it's because of" and just keep validating the past to have created the programming and the beliefs that it did. And then from that place of understanding, then we can heal the relational quality. It was such a big eye opener for me to realize I didn't trust the river. Wow.
You're not alone. I definitely noticed that with a lot of clients too, and I dabble with the trust piece, but the universe consistently, validates that I should trust in it. So I try and return to that piece because it's really never disappointed me, even in those. But I've had to hit bottom. I've had to make changes too, right? This is the call,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so I hear you. So what am I going to do about it? What's my action piece in this, right? Like same thing with all these manifestation theories and stuff out there, these different ways, like the secret. The secret is a lovely concept, but there's a step that is missing in that is an action piece. So you can, visualize and you can do all these things, but we actually have to take a tangible step somewhere. And so I think they're, these really big reminders that when we trust the messaging, or we learn to trust the messaging, even if we don't quite trust it yet, but we take that step in faith, whatever that is, that little leap of faith. I mean, there's a reason all these adages of like time, these phrases, they are there for a reason. Historically, all of these things have been experienced by humanity
Mhm.
as we've because we've been on this soul journey and for like thousands of years, right?
Exactly.
It's so interesting too. I want to just say, Dana, that I think after hearing you guys speak about that, I'm really feeling like nature. Like when you say that people don't trust the river and have faith. So Dana speaks of having faith in the universe and the universe having your back,
Yeah.
that idea. You're right. I mean, I just want to say that nature, we've talked about nature being a good friend, nature in forest therapy,
Yeah.
the forest is the therapist. And so I would just like to offer that forward because I think if we don't trust in the river and we don't have faith that the universe has our back, it is an invitation to spend time connecting with nature
That's right.
because nature beings, if you're quiet and you spend not just 5 minutes, but if you go for a walk, go to the beach, put your hands on the sand, put your hands on a log, close your eyes, listen to the water, like really embody, have an embodied experience, a sensory experience in nature. Maybe that is what it looks like to unpack
Yeah.
the load on the train
Mhm.
is to spend 10 minutes, 20 minutes sitting by the water, closing your eyes, putting your hands on the soil, and just going into a sensory moment and out of your head and into your body. And then we're reminded of the earth that supports us, that holds not just our weight, but the earth that holds our energy,
Mhm.
the earth that holds our pain. But that's what nature does.
Mhm.
It helps you to open.
And that's our nature, right? Remembering that these elements of nature are within us. They are what makes up matter,
Yeah.
our matter, why we're here, why we have a structure. It is the combination of the elements in our own individual expressions.
Yeah, and I think being in relation with human beings can close us because it's so hard. Like let's just be honest, it's hard to be in relationship with human beings. So let's not forget that nature beings always accept us, always remind us,
Yeah.
always show us the way. So if we are only focused on human relations,
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know that we do stay open as nature would suggest that we do.
Yeah.
Nature can be our biggest co-regulator, 100%.
Yeah.
I love this idea that nature can be a co regulator, can be a connector for you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And with that, SoulNet, we wish you some quality time in nature and just really tuning into the river, the universe, the messages that may be coming forward, the inquiry. We'll see you soon.